Hello, everybody. This is day 10 of 101 Days Alive, and today I'm being joined by Dana Moonlong. I had met her through the art realm and just doing art shows, I believe. If my memory is serving me correctly, we knew each other before Unstoppable Influence, and then we really connected once we started the Unstoppable Influence challenges. We did it. So I was just trying to remember, we had already connected prior to Unstoppable Influence, like our paths had crossed. Yes. Okay. So I'm remembering that correctly. It's been a while. It's been probably 2016, I think, but we didn't become Facebook friends until 2017 is what Facebook says.
Something like that. Yeah, it's been a hot minute since we've been friends.
Yeah, it's been a while, and we have a lot of memories together. I mean, we all went in the van to Salt Lake from Boise, so that was fun. But we have so much to share with everybody, so I want to let Dana tell us a little bit about herself, and then we'll just go with the flow and where things take us.
I'm really excited to be here. When Jessica brought this up, I was just ecstatic. I responded immediately, yes, sign me up. Because I haven't been on a Facebook Live for quite some time, and I keep thinking I need to get back to that and just get back into the habit, the practice of talking in front of a camera. And every time I do, I really enjoy it. So you may have to cut me off and just go, we're out of time. Because I find when I get on here, I really enjoy it. I really like being on the camera and talking. So yeah, about me, gosh, I have been in Boise, Idaho, now Meridian, in the Valley at least, for 21 years as of last Memorial Day. It's definitely home. I've spent a little time away here and there over the years. I spent 6 months in 2009 in England, and I had intended to go back to university and get a second degree. And then when my house here in the States didn't sell, I didn't have the money to stay. So I came back. Always keep coming back to Idaho. And then a few years ago, I tried another grand adventure of moving back to Seattle, which is where I was from before I moved here 21 years ago. And again, that was a really difficult move. There were a lot of things that were just very difficult about it. However, I kept thinking there's got to be a reason. There's got to be a reason why I felt like I was supposed to move there, why I was there, why it was difficult, and why I was supposed to come back to Idaho. And it's taken a long time to really process a lot of that, but I'll just suffice to say now it really served its purpose, and I'm better for it, even though there's parts of it that are still painful memories. I wouldn't be who I am now if I hadn't had those experiences. So I'm actually really grateful for it, even though it was difficult. And I guess maybe that's a good segue into something Jessica and I had been talking about, is difficult things. She asked if I would talk about, light, airy things like life and death and fear. Oh, perfect. Yeah, let's just, touch on all these things in the next few minutes and solve it all. But the best I could do is share with you my experience and some things that I've learned from it. I'll start with this, and that is, I've been talking with Jessica for a long time about having her help me design a very particular tattoo, and it incorporates a butterfly, and it will also incorporate the phoenix bird, the phoenix rising out of the ashes. And for me, they both have incredibly significant power and value and symbolism. And tonight I wanted to talk a little bit more about the butterfly. Just last week, and it was triggered by this, last week Jessica posted something about the metamorphosis that the caterpillar goes through. And as soon as she said, tonight let's talk about life, death, and fear, I went, well, I can only assume that if a caterpillar had human feelings, they would go through all of the fear. I mean, it knows it's going to die. At least I think it does. I mean, that's why it builds the cocoon. It knows that it's going to be completely and utterly broken down, only to rebuild into something better. I'd like to think that they know that, but at the same time, the human part of me goes, well, that's not fair. They know their end result. We don't get to know that sometimes. We start going into the scariest parts of our lives, the pain, the breaking down, that being completely disintegrated, that I am this near death kind of an experience, without knowing that we're going to come back as something more strong and more beautiful and more vibrant and alive. And so it makes me wonder, does the caterpillar even acknowledge fear? Do they go through that, or do they just do what they do as an example for us in our fear as humans of a difficult situation without knowing the outcome? Do we look at them as an example and say, well, if a caterpillar who doesn't even know what's going on can just trust the process, maybe I can too.
When you made the decision to move, pick whichever, like going over to England or going to Seattle, either of those, or maybe it was a combo of both. When you made that decision, what was the fear like? What were some of the fears? I know with the Seattle one that there were a lot. So can you expand on that, and what allowed you to still do it and still give it a go?
That is a fantastic question. Both of them, for totally different reasons, were terrifying, to be frank. Moving to England, I was moving to a foreign country where I knew no one, and I was moving by myself with no support. As far as when I got there, I didn't know what I was doing. I did have a place to live lined up, so that was helpful. I knew where I was going, but I had no supplies other than what I was shipping over, but it wasn't coming at the same time. And it was very terrifying. I had no idea where to even start looking for things like bedding or pots and pans. We didn't have DoorDash and Uber Eats and things like that back in 2009, just that short a time ago. We didn't have those kinds of things. So I couldn't just get on my brand spanking new little flip phone and call up DoorDash and say, I'm hungry, bring me food. I had to go and find stores and trade money and currency and all of that. I mean, everything down to the smallest level of daily existence, I almost had to relearn from scratch. And that was, and in a foreign country where I didn't know where customs typically were. I mean, I knew basically, so I'd visited so many times, but to move and live and be among another culture was very different and very terrifying. And I was by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And homesickness hit hard. I did not expect that. I really didn't expect homesickness, but it hit hard. And I probably cried multiple times a day, every day for about 2 or 3 weeks. And then it started to taper off as I made myself, I started going to church because I thought, well, maybe that's a safe place to start meeting nice people. And so I just dove into that wholeheartedly and did start meeting really great, nice people, most of whom I'm still friends with. So that's been a fantastic outcome, but yeah, it was terrifying. It was huge. But I didn't back out of that, nor did I back out of Seattle, moving to Seattle, because part of it is just how I'm wired. I love adventure, and I couldn't think of a much more grand adventure than to move and just wing it. Everything. You put whatever you want into the space of the word it, and I winged everything. I had to. And boy, it all made me a lot stronger. And some things had fabulous outcomes, and some things in Seattle especially had really difficult, painful outcomes. But again, it all served its purpose. So I almost feel like I have an unfair advantage when I'm talking about this, because I am naturally a very adventurous person. And I look at big things like that as personal challenges. And I tend to be very resourceful. I'm naturally a problem solver. And so I got to be creative in those ways. I found resources. I found ways around problems that I don't know that I would have ever even thought of before. So I learned to really work within my strengths. My weaknesses weaknesses in those scenarios came back to, I really really treasure and value support systems, whether it's a group of people or a friend, or like Unstoppable Influence, which is a large group, a community. I really value being a part of that and having that support in someone or a bunch of someone saying, you can do this. We absolutely believe in you. You've got what you need. Just go, do. We've got your back. And so not having that was actually really difficult. That was really scary.
So, a question.
Yes.
You always thought that you would be happy in England, right? And then you thought, well, Seattle's where I wanted to go to, so I'll be happy there. How have you found that happiness now? So I have a quote here that might help you think about where I'm trying to go with this. And the
Okay.
quote is from Tara Brach. I don't know if that's how to say her last name. It's Brach. She's the founder of the Insight Meditation Community of Washington, D.C. And the quote is this: as long as we keep attaching our happiness to the external events of our lives, which are ever changing, we'll always be left waiting for it. And I know that you've gone through a tremendous amount of work just since 2017. I mean, even on that drive to Salt Lake and back in the van, that was a big growth period. So expand on that however you feel compelled to share about finding happiness, and where are you at with that part of your life?
Wow, that's another really great question. Yeah, in the past, I absolutely relied 100% on external sources, on circumstances being just right. And I was just laughing with someone the other day. We were talking about, remember the old school daytimers? You had your book and it was thick and it was laden with, coupons and credit cards and your schedule and pretty pens and the whole thing. And the way that I tried to control my circumstances so that I could make them as happy as possible was I planned out my life and everything to do with my life to the 15-minute increments every single day. And I thought by working circumstances, I could make happiness come out of those circumstances. And it's classic. We all do it in some way, shape, or form. We all think that somehow if only this would happen, or if only I were in this place, if only I made more money, if only I were dating this person or married this person, then I would be happy. And even in England, I was happy, but I was scared and I was lonely, and yet, yes, I have very mixed feelings about England in particular. I've always said if I could go back, I would. And I visited, but now I almost waffle about whether or not I would move. I finally have found happiness within myself, so I feel like I could go anywhere and do the best I could to make myself happy in any circumstance, is what I'm trying to say. Seattle was an extremely difficult time of learning that my happiness absolutely comes from me, because in many ways I felt trapped in Seattle, and yet I felt like I was supposed to be there, which made me feel even more trapped. And I knew I had to really dig deep and figure out what it was that I truly wanted and needed in order to be happy. And I realized it had nothing to do with circumstances. So that was one thing that happened in Seattle that served its purpose for me being there, as I began to realize I make me happy. No one else makes me happy. No other things being right in the world. For Pete's sake, I came back because the city started to shut down from COVID. I had a couple of family situations that gave me the opportunity to come back to Boise and land in a safe place. But Idaho shut down not very long after I got back. And so I didn't really have a choice as to whether or not I was going to move back to Seattle. And I didn't really have a lot of choice as to whether or not I was going to be happy because of circumstances. Circumstances were not very happy last year for a lot of, well, for most of the world. And that was when I began to really say, I need to start living what I say. So in 2019, I began to start saying and thinking, okay, maybe I can accept that I make my own happiness. And then 2020 was like, I need to start living like I make my own happiness. And I hit another little rock bottom last year. I had some really difficult things happening financially, and I finally did some changes, and I set my intention. I made my choice. I did the line in the sand and said, I'm not going back. I'm doing this, this, and this. And I set out a number of goals, and yes, they made me happy, but what really made me happy was I was living as a happy person in circumstances that I created to make me happy. So it was like one thing compounded the other. I was living like a happy person, even though my circumstances weren't. But then the circumstances started coming around that made me happy too. So I'm like, okay, I'm finally starting to get this. One thing will lead to the other, and it starts to become reciprocal. And that was a huge thing I've learned just this year. So
Thanks. Yeah, that, and as a planner, like last year had to be chaos for you, right?
it
Like
was, but fortunately I had let go of that day planner, and I mean, I still schedule things out on my calendar, but I also am able to put in buffer time and things like that now, because I've learned a few things since the days of hard copy planners. And I find that, flexibility is a very happy thing. It allows for spontaneity, and it allows for, friends popping in, or being able to just say, yeah, I'd love to go to dinner with you tonight. Let's go. Let's do it. Or yeah, let's meet up for drinks after work. That kind of thing is just so much more. There's so much more freedom in it now. But yes, 2020 was hard to plan for me, financially specifically. I was doing a lot of things. My business was starting to really take off, and then it tanked at a really strange time last year. Not when I would have expected it to, with the repercussions of the COVID shutdown. So it really threw me for a loop, and that was okay, because I said, okay, my happiness is not tied up with this. I'm not reliant upon my finances, even though it was still scary, because I thought, oh my gosh, I need a change. I need business. I need something to happen. But I didn't allow it to rule instead of my happiness. I didn't allow it to take over. I kept doing everything I could to take care of my internal world, so that I could make myself a safe place and a happy place. I did a lot of meditation and began creating this very robust world in my own mind's eye that was a very, very happy, calming place to go. And I go there whenever I wanted to. So yeah, so I learned a lot about, practical, boots on the ground, getting it figured out. What am I going to do? How am I going to keep my happiness, even in rough circumstances for the whole world? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So you mentioned your business. Will you tell us, because not everyone knows what you do, so please share what that business is and how people can reach you. We'll put links and whatever we need in the comments, but please do share.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I'm a coach for writers, and I'm a manuscript editor, and I am also a writer myself. I am currently working on a book, and I've given myself a self-imposed deadline of the end of the year to get it finished. We'll see how that goes. The time keeps getting shorter and shorter, and but we'll see. I'm working really hard on getting that done, and I've got direction with it. So I just need to sit down and do it. But yeah, my business is called Massive Happiness, which I think is funny. We were just talking so much about happiness. It's called Massive Happiness, and the piece of artwork that's over my shoulder is an original from my late fiance, who came up with the name Massive Happiness before he passed away. And it was his business name for any of the passion projects that he wanted to do. So he had his business name, which was one thing. And then for any of the passion things that he wanted to do, which was fun graphic design things, where he was helping nonprofits or Kickstarter groups and that sort of thing, those things fell under Massive Happiness. So when he passed away and I closed down his business side of things, I thought, what better way to continue the passion project than to make it my passion project? And so I started tailoring the whole business to my skill set, but it's still, Massive Happiness is still just reigns over the whole thing. But this piece of art, I can't stop looking at it the whole time I'm doing this video. I'm like, oh, that just makes me so happy.
Yeah.
I love it. And it
Yeah,
makes me really happy. I've got it on a wall finally too. So
yes, me too. It's so nice to see that you have your walls to put your things up on. Yes.
yeah.
Sarah Holt said momentum of happiness when you were talking about how you just kept moving forward in that feeling and living in that space of joy. So we are getting close to the end of our half an hour together, and we didn't go as deep into the light topics that we initially started with, but I think that everything that you've talked about is all a piece of that, a piece of going into that cocoon and not knowing what's going to be on the other side, and allowing the old you to die so that where you are meant to be can come forward.
Right.
So, do you have any closing thoughts for us?
I do. I have one more thing that I want to say about the butterfly metamorphosis. And this is the point that has impacted me so dramatically over the years. And I may cry. I will not apologize, but I may cry. The thing that I love so much about that metamorphosis is that it goes into the cocoon as a caterpillar. We all know that. And it completely breaks down into nothing but goo. And it's in this dark chrysalis. And it varies from species to species how long it's in there, but it's in there. It's in the dark. It's alone. It breaks down completely, except for one thing. The only thing that remains of that caterpillar is something called an imaginal disc. And on that little tiny plate is the DNA for the butterfly. And the only way that that DNA gets activated is through the enzymes that are released by the dead caterpillar. The goo itself becomes food so that the caterpillar can grow, so that the DNA can be released for the butterfly. And the point that stands out to me in that is that no matter what kind of caterpillar you think you are, the DNA for the butterfly has always been within you. It's always been there. You don't have to create it. You don't have to fake it till you make it. You don't have to do anything except trust the process, because it's already been there inside you all along.
Oh, that's so good. I got massive goosebumps.
Isn't
So,
that the best?
yes,
Yeah.
brilliant.
It's
I
so
love it.
empowering. It really set me free to begin trusting myself, that I know what I'm doing, whether I think I do or not. I actually already have everything I need to do whatever comes up in my life. It's always been there. And so I can trust it. It's always going to be there. It's going to be there at the right time when just when I need it the most. Whatever it is, it's already been inside me.
Oh, I
And it is
love
for
it.
everyone else too.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. And that was a
Absolutely.
perfect nugget for everybody to end this evening with us.
It's
Love
coming.
you all. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.